I knew something was wrong the moment the HR manager called my name, her smile too tight. Her voice too sweet, like she already knew the ending of a story I hadn't even begun. It was my first hour in the building. I hadn't even opened my laptop yet. My badge still smelled like new plastic. But her heels clicked sharply across the marble floor, echoing down the hallway like a warning I wasn't supposed to hear. "Follow me," she said. "We need to discuss something. Privately." Privately. First hour. No explanation. Perfect. I walked behind her through the glass corridor, pretending to be confused, pretending to be nervous, pretending to be exactly the woman they believed they could push around. I kept my expression small, unsure, harmless. Because sometimes the only way to see a person's true nature is to let them believe you're powerless. The conference room was already filled when I stepped in. 3 people waited inside HR, the coup, and a young man I had never seen before, lounging with a smug grin like someone who had never heard the word no in his life. I later learned he was the CEO's nephew. I also learned he was the reason this company was rotting from the inside. The coup barely looked up before sliding a paper across the glossy table. "We've reviewed your background," he said. "You're not a good cultural fit. Today will be your last day." Last day? I hadn't even had a first day. I glanced at the termination paper. No explanation. No metrics. No conversation. Just dismissal. Quick and clean, like swatting away a fly. The nephew smirked, tapping his pen against his knee. "It's nothing personal," he said, voice dripping with casual arrogance. "People like you just don't blend well here. People like you." The words were soft, but the insult behind them was loud. HR folded her hands. Rehearsed sympathy painted across her face. "We wish you the best in your future endeavors." And that was that. Fired. Dismissed. Invisible. They expected me to swallow the humiliation and leave quietly through the side exit. Maybe cry in my car, maybe update my resume, maybe blame myself. But instead I simply nodded, folded the paper, and walked out of the room with the same calmness of someone watching a movie she had already seen. Because this wasn't my ending. And even the beginning. They thought they were getting rid of a powerless new hire. But in less than 48 hours, they were going to learn the truth. I wasn't an employee. I wasn't a mistake in their hiring system. I wasn't someone they could fire. I was the silent investor who owned 72% of the company, and the people who just fired me were about to walk into a boardroom they didn't know belonged to me. I didn't drive home after they fired me. I didn't cry. Didn't panic. Didn't even feel anger. Instead, I walked calmly to the parking garage, sat in my car, and opened the discreet folder hidden under the passenger seat, the one containing the documents they never imagined existed. The truth was simple. I wasn't there to start a job. I was there to study the infection for the last 12 months. I had been silently watching this company from a distance. Luntrex Analytics, once an innovation powerhouse, had become a sinking ship disguised with pretty branding and empty confidence. Investors didn't see it. Employees felt it. And leadership? Well, leadership was too drunk on their own arrogance to notice the cracks forming beneath their feet. But I didn't just notice the cracks. I bought them through 3 shell companies and a silent limited partnership. I began accumulating shares slowly, strategically, invisibly. Nobody questioned the numbers because people rarely question anything that looks boring. And nothing looks more boring than gradual equity acquisition. By the time the CEO realized someone was quietly gaining control, it was already too late to stop it. I held 40%, then 50-3, then 72, majority. Ownership. Absolute authority, complete control. But titles don't mean understanding, and I didn't want to rule from a distance. I wanted to see what the employees saw, feel what they felt, understand the rot, not from the boardroom, but from the inside. That's why I applied under a different configuration of my legal name, still mine, just not the one tied to my holding portfolio. My resume was crafted to look mid-level, modest, perfectly forgettable. The kind of employee toxic leaders dismiss without thinking, and in 1 hour, They proved everything I needed to know. Favoritism wasn't a rumor. It was culture. Bullying wasn't isolated, it was policy and the CEO's nephew. He wasn't just entitled, he was dangerous in the way only incompetent people with power can be. As I sat in my car, I replayed the COO's words in my head. You're not a good cultural fit.
He was absolutely right. I
didn't fit into cultures built on arrogance and inherited authority. I didn't fit into workplaces where talent was punished and nepotism was rewarded. I didn't fit into systems where the weak were stepped on while the useless were promoted, but soon, very soon, the culture would fit into my standards. I clicked open a secured app on my phone. At the top of the screen, a flashing alert awaited me. Board access granted. Emergency meeting request. Ready. Perfect. All it needed was one button. One. Confirmation. One small signal that the real owner was stepping out of the shadows, but I wasn't ready to press it. Yet, revenge isn't done in bursts. Revenge is crafted, layered, guided by timing more than emotion. So I drove home, reviewing every detail of the hostile environment I'd just walked through. The clipped tones, the dismissive glances, the smug smirk on the nephew's face. They had no idea that firing me wasn't their victory. It was their confession, their self-exposure, their first mistake. And tomorrow morning, their second mistake would be walking into a boardroom they thought they controlled, only to find me sitting at the head of the table. The next morning, the city felt different. Maybe it was just me, lighter, sharper, more focused. The kind of calm you feel right before you flip a switch that changes everything. I arrived at my private office downtown, the one they didn't know existed. Overlooking the skyline they believed they ruled. Arthur, my senior board liaison, was already waiting for me. He stood as I entered, his expression a mix of worry and restrained amusement. So,
he said, adjusting his glasses, they actually fired you.
I set my bag down. They didn't fire me. They revealed themselves. He exhaled a long, tired breath. This company. It's worse than we thought, isn't it? I nodded slowly.
Much worse.
And then I told him everything. Not the dramatic version. The quiet version. The small, everyday cruelties that reveal real character. The COO's smugness. The HR manager's scripted empathy. The nephew's careless insult. And the way not a single person in that room bothered to ask a question before ending someone's job. Arthur shook his head. Sloppy leadership always shows itself in moments of power.
Exactly, I said.
And we're going to use those moments. I opened my laptop and pulled up the internal audit files I'd been building silently over the last year. Performance graphs. Employee turnover patterns, project delays, lost investor confidence. A pattern emerged clearly. Tyler, the CEO's nephew, was the soft spot, the crack in the armor, the weakest link. Holding the strongest title, he wasn't just toxic, he was incompetent. And incompetence leaves paper trails, underfunded projects, inconsistent reporting, misallocated budgets. Every mistake he made had been cushioned, hidden, excused. Nepotism wasn't just present. It was documented in the numbers. Arthur leaned forward, voice low. What's your move? I call the board meeting today, I said. But not for removal. Not yet. He frowned. Then for what? For observation, I replied. I want them to see their empire through my eyes before I tower down the pieces that are killing it. Because revenge isn't satisfying when it's quick. Revenge feels best when everyone finally understands why it's happening. I drafted the meeting notice carefully. Immediate leadership review, mandatory. Attendance, CEO, COO, HR head, executive strategy director, senior investment partners. Issued by majority owner. No name, just the title. Let them sweat, let them guess, let them fear the shadow they ignored. When I hit send, Arthur let out a soft whistle. By noon, everyone in that building will be panicking.
Good, I said.
Panic reveals character. And it did, within an hour. My inbox overflowed with frantic messages from department heads who suddenly remembered my name, asking if I needed anything, if they could help. If they should prepare reports, I ignored every single one. I didn't need reports. I already had the truth, what I needed. Was there unfiltered reactions? Because tomorrow, when they walked into that room and saw me at the head of the table, the same woman they dismissed, mocked, and stripped of a job on her first day, there would be no rehearsed apologies, only the raw shock of realizing the person they underestimated was the only one with the power to decide their future, and I intended to make that moment unforgettable. By the time the board meeting hour approached, I could feel the shift rippling through the company like a storm rolling in, unseen but unmistakably close. People who had ignored me the day before were now whispering in hallways, passing anxious glances, clutching coffee cups like lifelines. News spreads fast in corporate buildings. But fear spreads faster. I arrived early not because I needed to prepare, but because I wanted to watch the room fill. The boardroom looked different from this angle, larger. Colder, the long polished table stretching out like a runway leading straight to the truth. I sat at the head, calm, composed, invisible behind the tinted glass walls. Outside, the floor buzzed with nervous energy. The first to arrive was the HR manager. Yesterday. She could barely look at me. Today, she couldn't stop staring. Her smile trembled at the edges. Hello. Are you here for... Yes, I said simply. She swallowed and sat 2 seats away from me, unsure whether she had the right to sit closer. Next entered the coup, the same man who slid the termination paper across the table just 24 hours earlier. His confidence had evaporated. He walked like someone whose map had suddenly lost all landmarks. He glanced at me, confused. You're early. I didn't respond. Sometimes silence is the loudest form of truth. They took their seats, awkwardly avoiding eye contact, whispering among themselves. I watched their discomfort grow, savoring it quietly, like a slow sip of something dark and earned. Then he entered. Tyler. The CEO's nephew. The golden boy. The reason the company was collapsing from entitlement, not incompetence. His lips twisted into a smirk the moment he saw me. Oh, you're here? You do realize this meeting is for executives? I leaned back in the chair that belonged to me far more than it ever belonged to him. I'm aware. He scoffed. Sweetheart, this is board level. You're not supposed to be here. He turned to HR. Did someone send the email to the wrong staff list again? The HR manager looked like she wanted to sink through the floor. No. The notice was sent by... She froze mid-sentence as the glass door opened again, and the CEO himself walked in. Gray hair. Sharp suit. Eyes that had seen markets rise and collapse. He was a man who carried authority like a natural scent, yet now he looked unsettled. Fragile beneath the weight of uncertainty, he looked at me. Really. Looked. Not with dismissal. Not with arrogance. With recognition. His jaw tightened. You... One word. Too aware. Too late. Tyler frowned. What? You know her? The CEO didn't answer. He didn't need to. The board members filed in behind him, 6 of them. Senior partners, investors, directors, people who did know my name. People who had signed the silent majority agreements. People who understood exactly who I was. And why my presence meant the world had shifted, one by one. They all paused when they saw me sitting at the head of the table. Few nodded respectfully. A few straightened their posture. A few went pale. Tyler looked between us, baffled. Can someone explain why she's sitting in that chair? I met his eyes for the first time since he dismissed me like a piece of lint on his designer jacket. That chair, I said softly, belongs to the majority owner. He laughed. Loud, too loud. Majority owner? What? You bought some employee shares? Please, the CEO spoke then, voice low, heavy, defeated. She's telling the truth. Tyler. Double quote, silence. The kind that freezes air. What? Tyler blinked. No, Dad never said, because you weren't supposed to know, the CEO snapped. But clearly, we should have told you sooner. He turned to me. 72%, isn't it?
Correct.
Tyler's face twisted. That's impossible. She works and she was fired yesterday. I let the words hang there, savoring their irony. Yes, I said. And firing me was the most revealing moment this company has given me. The CEO slumped into his chair, rubbing his forehead. HR stared at the table like she was praying it would swallow her. The coup swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing like a buoy in a storm. But Tyler? He couldn't stop. He couldn't accept. He couldn't understand. "You can't do this," he sputtered. "You can't just walk in here and—" "I can," I interrupted. "I'm not here to take a job." I leaned forward. "I'm here to take responsibility." Their eyes flickered. "Confusion, fear, realization, and responsibility," I added softly, "requires removing what's rotten." Tyler's face drained of color. The crew shifted uncomfortably. HRS. Breath hitched, because they already knew. This was no introduction. This was judgment, and the people who fired me yesterday were about to learn exactly how deep their betrayal ran. The room felt like it had stopped breathing. Every pair of eyes flickered between me and the CEO, waiting for someone to break the silence. But I didn't rush. Silence is power when the guilty are drowning in it. Tyler finally snapped first. "This is a joke," he muttered, shaking his head. "You think you can walk in here, flash some fake document, and—" I slid a folder across the table. Not dramatically, calmly, like someone handing over a menu at a restaurant. "Go on," I said. "Open it." He hesitated, and that hesitation told the entire board everything they needed to know about him. People who are innocent grab evidence instantly. People who are guilty wait, afraid of what they'll see. He flipped the folder open. The blood drained from his face. Inside were 12 months of internal audits cross-checked, time-stamped. Verified every mistake he made, every budget he lost, every project he delayed, every instance where someone else was punished for his incompetence. And attached to the back were the nepotism logs. Emails. Messages. Approvals. He signed without authority, favors he gave to friends, staff. He bullied into silence. The coup's hand shook. HR covered her mouth. The CEO closed his eyes, as if bracing for impact. Tyler slammed the folder shut. "You stalked me." "No," I said. "I studied the company. You just left the biggest footprints." His jaw tightened. "I'm family here." I leaned back. And that is exactly the problem. A few board members exchanged glances, relieved, almost. The kind of relief that comes from finally seeing the truth spoken out, loud after months of quiet suffering. The CEO looked at me with something between shame and acceptance. "What do you want?" "Change," I said. "Not for your sake. For the people who work here." I tapped the table lightly. "Here's what's going to happen." Every head lifted. Every breath held. "First," I said, "we conduct a full leadership review, independent, unfiltered, every department head, every employee. Anonymous surveys. Private interviews. A full reconstruction of what your culture really looks like." The HR manager's face paled. She whispered, "Anonymous interviews?" "Yes," I said. "I want to hear their real voices without fear of retaliation." The coup swallowed. "That could create unrest, only if there's something to hide."
He looked away. "Second," I continued, "financial mismanagement will be audited. Externally. Every missing dollar.
Every misfiled report. Every unexplained cost." Tyler shot forward. "You're doing this to embarrass me." "No," I said softly. "You embarrassed yourself." The board stayed silent. But their silence wasn't neutral anymore. It was agreement. It was permission. It was the collective exhale of people finally seeing a way out. "Third," I said, folding my hands, "all executive privileges linked to nepotism will be suspended. Effective immediately." Tyler's voice cracked. "You can't strip me." "I can," I interrupted. "And I will." I slid another document across the table, this time addressed to the CEO. "Fourth," I told him, "you will step back temporarily. Voluntary leave. 30 days. A hush rolled through the room. The CEO inhaled, slow, shaky, but honest. "And if I refuse?" "Then I show the board the financials you've been signing off on." His eyes fell. He understood. This wasn't punishment. This was accountability. And finally, I let the moment breathe. Let their dread settle. Let the truth sink in deep. Tyler, I said, turning to him, you will vacate your role today. His chair scraped violently as he stood. My father, my position, this isn't a family business anymore, I said. This is a company. And companies don't reward sabotage. For the first time, he had nothing left to say. His power evaporated. His arrogance cracked. His voice failed. He looked smaller. Younger. Unmasked. The CEO stared at the table. Defeated. HR stared at the wall. Haunted. The coup stared at his hands. Trembling, and I sat at the head of the table, the woman they fired, dismissed. Underestimated. Not for revenge. Not for ego, but because someone needed to rip out the rot before the entire company collapsed under the weight of its own decay. Any objections? I asked. Silence. The kind of silence that marks the end of an era. And the beginning of judgment. I didn't knock when I entered the boardroom. I didn't need to. Not anymore. Every head turned, some in confusion, some in fear, and a few with the kind of silent curiosity that only billion-dollar problems can summon. The morning sun cut through the tall glass windows, painting sharp lines across the long oak table. And for the first time since stepping into this company, I felt the room bend around me. Harper was already there, pacing in tiny frantic steps. When she saw me, she froze. She looked smaller now, drowning in the same confidence she'd worn like armor on my first day. Why are you here? She demanded, voice trembling just enough for me to savor it. I pulled out the chair at the head of the table. The chair she believed belonged to her, and sat with a calmness I didn't fully feel. The board members quietly watched, trying to understand the shifting power in front of them. We're starting, I said. No one questioned it. Not even the chairman. Harper tried to laugh, a brittle little sound. This is ridiculous. She's a junior hire. She was fired yesterday. This meeting isn't for... Sit down, I said softly. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The silence it created was absolute. She sank into the closest seat, like her body gave up before her pride did. I opened the folder I'd brought, the one with the truth she never bothered to imagine. Before we discuss quarterly investments, I began, you should all know who you've actually been reporting to. The CFO adjusted his glasses. And who would that be? I slid the ownership documents across the table. Not fast, not dramatic, just enough for the silence to tighten like a noose. They read in real time, brows lifting, shoulders straightening, a few discreet glances thrown toward Harper. 72%. One director whispered. Another exhaled. Good God, Harper shot to her feet. This is fake. There's no way. It's legal, the chairman said flatly, still reading. Signed, verified, and inherited. That word inherited spread across the table like wildfire. The CFO cleared his throat, suddenly pale. Miss Rowan, why didn't you inform us sooner? I wanted to understand the culture first, I said. Turns out, I understood it faster than expected. My eyes slid to Harper. She knew the moment was coming. She just didn't know how sharp it would feel. Yesterday, I said, this employee humiliated me publicly, fired me on the spot, mocked my qualifications, told me I was worthless. A wave of discomfort rippled across the board. They weren't used to this tone, quiet, measured, but carrying the weight of absolute power. Harper's voice cracked. I didn't know. That's the problem, I replied. You didn't care to know. She looked around the room for support. None met her eyes. They watched her the way people watch a building collapse, horrified, but unable to look away. I leaned forward just slightly. Effective immediately. Harper Lowell is terminated. She let out a broken laugh. You can't do that. This is my team, my department, your employment, I said gently, exists because I allowed this company to exist. The chairman cleared his throat. Harper, it's done. Her face drained. She stood in silence for a moment, then grabbed her bag with trembling hands. As she walked toward the exit, she paused just long enough for our eyes to meet. Rage shimmered beneath her humiliation, like a promise. This isn't over, she whispered. I smiled. It hasn't even begun. The door shut behind her, sealing her downfall with a soft click that echoed louder than any slam. I turned back to the board. Now, I said, Let's talk about the people who actually build this company. And for the first time in years, every executive in that room realized the balance of power had changed permanently. The boardroom emptied slowly after that, each member walking out with a new kind of posture, careful, respectful, aware. The weight of the company no longer felt like something pressing down on me. It felt like something I finally held in my own hands. When the last executive left, the room fell quiet. The kind of quiet that lets you hear your own heartbeat and the shifting future waiting right outside the door. I stood and walked toward the window. The city stretched below, busy, loud, unaware of the tiny war that had just ended several floors above. My reflection in the glass didn't look like the girl who'd been mocked and fired on her first day. She looked steadier, sharper, like someone who understood both the cost and the power of silence. The HR manager approached me carefully, as if stepping into a new gravitational field. "Miss Rowan," she said, "the staff is a bit shocked. There are questions. Let them ask," I replied softly. "And let them see the answers in our next actions." She nodded, relief loosening her shoulders. "The team will be grateful. They've been struggling under Harper for a long time." A small ache settled in my chest, not pain but recognition. I once sat under people like her too, people who believed cruelty was efficiency and dignity was optional. "Not anymore. We're rebuilding the culture," I said. "From the ground up?" And for the first time since inheriting that monstrous 72% stake, I knew exactly what to do with it. Not for vengeance, not for ego, but to build a place where no one would ever be humiliated the way I was as I left the boardroom. The whispers in the hallway faded. People stood straighter when I walked by, not out of fear, but out of understanding. Word was spreading fast, so was change, and the empire that had once tried to crush me was now the one I would reshape, one decision at a time. Power doesn't reveal who you are. It reveals who everyone else has always been. The moment I showed them the truth, their masks slipped, the fear, the guilt, the sudden respect. But the real victory wasn't firing Harper or taking my seat at the head of the table. It was realizing that silence is not weakness, and patience is not surrender. I learned that the world will judge you before it knows you, but it can't define you unless you let it. And sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't destruction, it's transformation, not proving them wrong, but proving yourself right.